This is the first one of these list videos I've made in a while that wasn't based on a request from a viewer, but I think it's such an obvious topic to cover, I thought I'd try my hand at it. Before we get into the video proper, I think it's worth taking a moment to explain what the appellation Swiss made really means. It's actually a piece of legislation that lays out strict guidance on criteria that products must fulfill in order to carry the designation. Essentially, if you just slap Swiss made on the dial without fulfilling these criteria, you're actually breaking the law. The rules are: the Swiss portion of the production cost must be at least 60%, and the most important part of the manufacturing process must have taken place in Switzerland. There are actually even more stringent rules involved if you want to feature just the word Swiss on the dial or state that the movement is Swiss. The takeaway here is that Swiss made on the dial is something that their government goes out of their way to protect as a mark of quality, which as a consumer is an indication that the product that you're getting is going to be pretty good. As for the rules of the video, they are as follows. Firstly, the watch must feature either Swiss or Swiss made on the dial. I should make the caveat that it doesn't mean the brand itself is Swiss. Secondly, the watch has to be available under $1,000. That won't necessarily be recommended retail price, can include discounts and sales, and if it involves second-hand prices, that will be flagged for each individual model. And finally, each brand will only be featured once for the sake of variety, and that was actually a lot harder for this video than it has been for some others. I'll also say that I've tried my best to focus on mechanical and automatic movements over quartz. With all that said, let's get into the video. I don't think many people will have expected TAG to be the first name on the list, and clearly a plastic quartz vintage piece is not everyone's idea of a high quality Swiss made watch. However, with TAG themselves trying to cash in on nostalgia with the overpriced Kith Hoyer collaboration recently, the Formula 1 has been brought back into the limelight. While the asking price for a Kith Formula 1 model is a frankly ridiculous $1,550, you can pick up all kinds of vintage Formula 1 models for a fraction of the price to get either the exact same look or a more modern interpretation. Most Swatch models simply feature Swiss on the dial, which, as discussed in the intro, is more involved than just having Swiss made. The System 51 is their signature mechanical movement and is named after its 51 parts. While certainly not handmade, the System 51 is by far and away the cheapest Swiss automatic movement on the market. It's also architecturally very interesting to look at and boasts a fairly unrivaled 90-hour power reserve. While the movement features in a wide range of models, I've picked out the System Through Again simply because for me the movement is the biggest selling point outside of the affordable price, so the more of the movement I can see, the better. The Through Again not only has an exhibition case back, but has skeletonized portions to the front so you can see it from both sides. Great value, but technically quite difficult to service, so not necessarily the option to go for if you want something to last a lifetime on wrist. The price point and colourway featured here does use an analogue quartz movement, but I do want to add that for a little extra there are automatic versions in this range. Victorinox are a brand primarily associated with the Swiss Army, and in particular their Swiss Army knives. They do however make watches too, and recently their ranges have been getting a little more refined. In the past their offerings have been very busy in terms of design aesthetics, so it was nice to see while researching this video that actually now they have a lot of models that are a lot more stripped back. This rose gold and brown version I've chosen to feature is particularly tasteful and exceptionally light given the leather strap and quartz movement combination, weighing in at only 57 grams total. To peel back the facade for a moment, I was between two minds as to whether or not to make my next list on Swiss made watches or brown dial watches, as it's a colourway I've become very interested in recently. With this model, it could easily feature on either list. The Hamilton Khaki Field range is often seen as a gateway into watch collecting, and you'll regularly see it suggested as a good option for a first watch for just getting started with the hobby. There's a reason for that. It's got a timeless design, goes well with a range of straps, has some fantastic dimensions with its 38mm sizing, meaning that it will wear pretty well on all but the largest of wrists, and the good news is, if you're not a fan of this brown model, there are countless other colourways available. If I were going to offer any criticism, it would be that the crown is a little on the large size, but if you think about the military history of this model, it makes sense. I do have some experience with Mondain. It's the brand my dad wears, and I own one of the much cheaper quartz models, not that it's in particularly good condition now. Most Mondain watches are designed after their claim to fame, being the manufacture of Swiss railway clocks. The design is really simple yet effective, and the lollipop hand with a burst of red to match the crown and minor points of dial print work really sets this off. It's quite hard to put into words really. The aesthetic is so simple, and yet you can tell that a lot of time has gone into making it proportionally perfect. Unfortunately, I don't have any footage of it, but I have tried on a colleague's Evo 2 automatic, and it really feels like a piece of artwork to wear. It's plain yet beautifully finished, and you even get an exhibition case back to see the Sellita SW220-1 doing its thing. You can get similar quartz models for a lot less, but they don't have the same solid feeling as the automatic. Boasting an 80-hour power reserve, exhibition case back, beautifully finished 5-link bracelet, day-date complication and 200 meters of water resistance, as well as Swiss made on the dial, is already a pretty strong argument for featuring on this list. However, the real reason I've chosen to include this DS Action Day-Date model from Certina is the colourway featured. Cyan has been a colour overly used recently, with a spike in popularity for Tiffany coloured dials. However, this deeper, richer version is used to great effect in combination with a sunburst finish and is far more unusual. Not only that, but I really like the small detailing using oppositional colouring with the orange tip to the second hand and its use for the depth rating. I think the Tissot Heritage 1938 is probably the best all-round watch you could look at purchasing from this list under the given price point. Tissot have become synonymous with the Powermatic 80 movement that features in so many of their timepieces, so it might come as a surprise to some that they offer one of the most affordable COSC certified Swiss automatic movements on the market, with the 1938 featuring an ETA 2824-2. The entire package is really something though, beyond just the movement. You're getting an anthracite sandblasted dial, tasteful sizing, classic looks and colouring, and dome sapphire crystal to match. I genuinely think the only real drawback to this watch is the font they've chosen for chronometer on the dial. Given that they're my favourite watch brand, it's perhaps the least surprising thing ever to see a Christopher Ward feature on this list. And actually, you're spoilt for choice at this price point when it comes to models from the brand. I was very torn as to which model to feature, but given that this is the one I've come closest to buying on several occasions, I thought it was appropriate to feature the Celeste. If I didn't already own one of the silver lacquer Citizen models, this would be my go-to everyday dress watch. The sizing and specifications are almost perfect. 36mm in diameter is great for a dress watch, under 12mm thick, a well-finished Sellita SW200-1 movement, which you can see beating away through an exhibition caseback, colour-matching leather strap, and of course the real selling point, that deep aventurine dial. Perhaps the best thing I can say about the watch is just looking at it for this video and writing out this script is making me question myself about not buying one. I wanted to feature a vintage model towards the top end of the list, so you can see just how far you can push your budget brand-wise if you're willing to look at older second-hand models. There are so many beautiful Omega models at the top end of this price bracket, but given that I featured one in my last list video, I wanted to branch out elsewhere. The choice is pretty incredible. You can get early Breitlings, IWC, Longines, and even some JLC models. Having said all that, I've opted to feature the Cartier tank. Now, to be transparent, are you going to get a flawless watch at this price? It's highly unlikely. You'll be likely to be looking at models from the 1970s, so there will be wear and tear. But you can mitigate some of that by looking for options without numerals on the dial or darker dial colours. Given how little the design language of the tank has changed over the last 50 years, it's going to look great on wrist regardless. Barely squeaking in under the $1,000 limit is a watch I've had my eye on recently. The Mido Ocean Star 36.5 is a watch that has clearly taken some inspiration from its Swatch stablemate Blancpain and their 50 Fathoms. It might be horological heresy to say this, but I actually think the Mido is better looking. It's no secret that I'm big on dimensions, specifically diameter, and generally the smaller the better down to 36mm. I know there are many that will say that lug to lug is just as important, and of course it is, but that sentiment also misses the point that I actually prefer smaller dials too, not just smaller wearing watches. If I didn't already have my bases covered for dive models, I would definitely be looking at actually purchasing an Ocean Star. The colourways are nice, the design is very tasteful, it features a Nevacron balancing spring and an 80-hour power reserve thanks to the Mido Caliber 80. My only slight reserve with it is that despite its small size, it is 12.3mm thick, so it is going to sit quite proud on wrist. So, these are my 10 picks for Swiss-made watches under $1,000. I will add here that I've tried to avoid models I've featured on lists before, so while the Tissot PRX is a really obvious shout here, it doesn't feature for that exact reason. I'll also add that this video doesn't bear the moniker of 10 best watches under $1,000. These are just some picks from me for your consideration. Having said that, I'm sure as ever that I have missed some brands and models that are deserving of being here. Let me know in the comments what you'd add to this list if you were putting your own together. It was pretty difficult to look beyond the value offered by the Swatch Group stable, so I'd be particularly interested in hearing about models outside of that. As ever, thank you for your time. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, consider dropping the video a like and subscribing for more content like this in the future.